Hello, and welcome to One Spark Stories, the podcast where innovators, creators, and some unsuspecting risk takers share about navigating highs and lows, laughter and tears, and how sometimes all it takes is one spark of inspiration to find your way to happiness. This podcast will leave you inspired to take action on your own purpose as we connect, create, and celebrate unique sparks around the globe, once again proving that it is a small world after all. I am your host, Katie Kearns, and the tables are turned today. You are going to get to hear more about my passion behind the One Spark Solutions business I've been building and growing, why I speak and write so much about aligning with your professional purpose, and where that is all rooted within my story. So enjoy today's conversation with Rita Richa. This was recorded live, and it was recorded for her podcast, Bippity Boppity Business. But we thought we'd try things a little differently. We wanted to see how it would go if we had it streaming across LinkedIn. We had it on Facebook and YouTube simultaneously. And I'll be honest, when we first started, we had no clue if it was working. We had no clue if it was actually broadcasting. We didn't know if it was going to save the link. And to start off with, hiccup as always seemed to be, my camera and audio were not working. Somehow settings were restricting it. So that all said, I think we still had a wonderful conversation, and one that I hope you find value in, and pull back the curtain a little bit on myself. So let me know what you think, and please forgive us if there were any hiccups or odd moments along the way. We are fully embracing the opportunity to try new things and understand that sometimes you have to fail forward. But I hope you enjoy it nonetheless. And without further ado, let's get on with the show.
Hello, Katie. How are you today?
I am fantastic. This is exciting to be back together, and I can't wait for this conversation.
Yes, I'm very excited to have Katie on the show today. So we had a prior conversation before, but we just thought it might be a good time to have one live. So if anyone is watching, you are welcome to tune in. We're going to talk about Katie and her former experience as being a cast member, but also the amazing things that she's doing now at her company, One Spark Solutions, and her 3 ideal pillars for a successful business. So before we get into any of that, Katie, can you give us just a 20-second overview of who you are and what you're looking forward to in this conversation today?
Okay, here we go. I will say being short on words is not my forte. So
that's okay.
Look, I've already burned through 5 seconds. Okay, I am a speaker, author, podcaster. I am a instructor of higher education. I am a former classroom teacher. I am a travel advisor. I am a wife, a mom, a sister, a daughter, a cousin, all the great things in life, right?
Right, exactly. And among all of those many amazing things, you are working on your business, One Spark Solutions. And I think that the business that you're working on is really going to be impactful, especially because a lot of the ideals that you are infusing into your business are a mishmash of all the experience that you just said and some of the basic ideals of best practice in the Disney Golden Age era kind of a thing. So Katie and I both love Disney, and we don't love it just for the obvious, cute, fun things that you can do at the park and all the nice things you can wear, but because some of the ideals of the business are just phenomenal in all areas, guest service and internal employee culture, operations, all of that. So anyways, let's get into the main topic today, which is your business practice, the premise of what you do to connect, create, and inspire. Did I get that right?
Celebrate.
Celebrate. I
No,
was
but
so
that
close.
word is perfect. If I could fit it in, like, it's not a C, and I have this thing about making sure it
Alliteration.
all flows, right? It's a beautiful thing.
So
So
break
yes,
down for us the connect, create, and
and
celebrate
celebrate.
theory.
Yes. So Rita, you said it so perfectly about the reasons that we have continued to enjoy the Walt Disney Company as adults. And, certainly I still go and enjoy rides and enjoy all that the different branches of the business also have, the television and the print and etc. But my career started with the company through the Disney College program and working at the stores and then becoming a campus representative for the Disney College program. So I spent about 6 years as a cast member. And during that time, I went through traditions. I did a lot of the training. I was involved in the Disney Volunteers program where we would go out. So I got to repeatedly hear and explore their organizational purpose of creating magic for people of all ages, of all places, everywhere. All creating happiness, essentially, was why we showed up every day. And yet, as I continued through my career, I noticed that there seemed to be a lack of intentional purpose. And it's not that I went into different jobs and was, disappointed or frustrated or hated it. I've loved every single position I've had. I've loved the people. I've loved the experience. But what I haven't loved is the burnout that I was feeling, that my colleagues were feeling, that everybody felt. And it impacted the experience of, I will say, our guests, whether it was students, whether it was when I was working in facilities and it was our customers, if it was any industry has people at the core of their business. And I noticed that so often we would show up each day and oblige to our task, but we weren't feeling that inspiration. We weren't feeling inspired on the hard days. And I wanted to make sure that people get back to that. So using that early experience, have gone through quite a nonlinear journey in my professional career, but it's always been on purpose. It's always been trying to find that why, leading with curiosity, and now going out and speaking to the importance of understanding and identifying your professional purpose through really the ABCs. Let's take it back to my educator self. Alignment, behaviors, and then connecting, creating, and celebrating that purpose over and over and intentionally over again. So yes, that's where I'm at nowadays.
Yes, I think it's important to note that the work that you do isn't just for individuals helping them to find their purpose, but really also helping businesses and organizations find that alignment and that core purpose. Because in a prior conversation we had, you mentioned something Disney did really well is aligning everybody on a common purpose with a strong call to action, a strong culture. And without a strong culture, everything else in the business doesn't have that constant motivation and gusto and just momentum that it potentially could. So give me an example. Let's do like a mini, just one-on-one workshop right now, right?
Yeah.
Give me an example of a way where, at least for my business, I'm starting Reignite Media. How would you help me align to find my business purpose, to connect, to create, and celebrate with not only people I work with, but just every day?
Yeah, I think especially for entrepreneurs, especially for leaders that are at that creative peak or are able to move the ship a little more freely, it is so important to understand your inner why. And I know it sounds so cliche to say, but why are you showing up every day? Why? And if you don't know or you don't like why you're showing up, why are you doing that? Why are you continuing down that track? And so I think it's really going to be a matter of unpacking what it is you love. So for yourself, I know that you've had professional changes, and just even a week ago, the conversation would have looked different between us, saying, you know what, Rita, what is it that you love doing every single day. And even if you are delivering mail, what about that inspires you every day? What is it? Is it the person on our street comes down with dog treats and she stops and hands them the family? She knows everything about us, sometimes probably too much about us based on our mailings. But for you, what is it that you would say you get up every day and you're like, golly, if I could spend so much more time doing this, what would that look like for you?
For me, definitely, I very much align with your business values. And that number one is to connect with people and whatever medium that would be, if that's through conversations or through content collaboration, podcasting, whatever that is. It lights my soul to know that I have made a one-on-one connection with somebody, or I've made somebody's day and impacted them in some way through the content that I've created. And then again, the creation aspect, I am a creative by nature. The idea, the process of creating something from nothing and then making it a reality, that's something for me that just really speaks to my soul. So that would be what I would answer to your question about what's my why and what makes me excited.
So I think there are countless people out there like yourself that are really loving finding ways to connect and share that message, share stories like I'm doing with my podcast. What is it that you can do within your control to share that? And so for people that are, when I was in facilities management, we had an amazing team and we're doing incredible projects, working whether it was with nonprofits or hospitals. Amazing work was happening.
Yeah.
But I know there were creatives in there that felt like they'd show up each day, whether it was our field technicians or it was somebody in the office. And so I would lean into that and say, as leaders or as the individual, what are you doing to allow that person to explore that passion and that purpose within your organization? Because suddenly that person showing up to work that day, knowing their task, knowing that they have different things they have to do. They have to work on the account management. They have to install an HVAC system. But what can they then do to share about your organization through their own creative outlet? Maybe they have a podcast where they get to talk about the people they meet or the incredible buildings they see. And, within reason, not sharing trade secrets or details of businesses, but how are you igniting that spark in your internal team? And a lot of that comes down to talent optimization. I'm going to use that word. How are you identifying your internal talent beyond that mundane job description and saying, you know what, this person actually has something. They love writing. I would love to get them to do an internal newsletter or see if they would like to start being a social media, have a presence there. Lean into those expertise. A photographer, same thing. Oh my gosh, why wouldn't you want to have an internal photographer that can share that messaging? So how are you capitalizing on that? So for you, what are you going to build into?
For me, this is so important because there are so many businesses that don't understand the idea of putting the right people in the right seat. They just kind of have a role and they fill that role with what's they could potentially think would be the best person.
Yeah.
But what you're discussing is no matter what industry you're in is to lean into the talents and strengths of that person and that individual. Yeah. And even if there may not be a full role for them that completely aligns with their strengths or talents, creating something that makes them shine in that way. And I think Disney does a really good job of matching the right kind of people, the right roles and the right seats together. Can you give me a little bit of your thoughts or insights on that? Do you feel like that's true?
I do. And it's funny you say that. I was just talking to my former roommate and we were both down there, and how amazing it was that when we went to work at Walt Disney World, I was placed in a merchandise role. And I had roommates that were working at resorts. I had some that were working in dining. Well, we had no idea, but once you start to have conversations with leadership, you realize, well, they looked at my background working at the Disney store, they realize that they have somebody who already knows the brand and the merchandise, and then they could start to build in. The other beautiful piece of it is they are a strong internal growth company. So yes, there are certainly leaders and there are certainly individuals that come in different roles, but the best experience and awareness you can ever have is working in the front lines. And for me, having that frontline experience, being whether it was merchandise at Hollywood Studios, whether it was renting strollers at Oscars, if you ever see me at the parks, I'm probably taking a selfie at the front by the statue in front of Oscar strollers because it's memories. That's where I was able to help be very intentional with the way people started their day and ended the day. Right. And they continue to see that growth and understand for professional internships, what track would this person then go? And then again, beyond. Does it always work out perfectly? No, they are a business and they do have different pipelines and there are mistakes made. But at the same time, I think they have done a great job of being more intentional in that and ensuring that when you're onboarded, you don't just spend an hour with HR going through your paperwork and then you're shipped off and say, okay, spend a day or spend a day, that's being generous, spend 20 minutes with this person and then 20 here. It's truly built into the culture and the company and the team as a whole. So, yes.
I think that's so important, what you just touched on briefly. I would love for you to elaborate more and maybe give an example of how that can translate into businesses today in relation to the personal time spent in onboarding the person that is the best fit for that role for that company. So Disney does the great job. They find the right fit. Like for you, they saw that you worked at the Disney store, and to transition into the parks, you could be potentially good at merchandising. I think picking someone for the role is great, but what's even more important is how they come into the company, how they're welcomed into the company, because that experience will radiate through their work as well. So touch on that a little bit, and then maybe give us an example of how that could be implemented in business.
Yeah, I think that is something right now that is a huge need across globally, truthfully, because we're still going through an employee and a business crisis as far as staffing. And so as people have been panicked, like, oh my gosh, everybody's resigning or they're taking on new businesses or moving positions, it became panic time. And so people were just hiring, churn them out. And I understand to a point why people would quickly burn out or quickly get frustrated because there was not intentional time. When you dedicate that time right out the gate to say, who are we as an organization? What is our history? What do we stand for? What do we understand as a company? What is our purpose? How does that look? How do we exemplify that? And not to sound like it's a micromanaging piece, but what actions and behaviors are you in control of every single day to ensure that you are living that out? Spending time to be explicit on that will save so much headache and frustration from all parties down the road. It clarifies the guessing game. Spend time addressing the norms in your building or in your company or in whatever organization you have, because there are norms and you know them. And why would you not address it, especially if somebody's asking? The second layer, the yes and. So yes, we address onboarding, and we also need to address the continued purpose and development of our internal teams already. Not an annual review. I mean, what are you doing to remind people? What are you doing to celebrate their growth, celebrate their understanding, and continue to keep them tied into that purpose?
That's that third pillar, celebrate.
Yes.
So when you mean celebrate, to further clarify, are you implying that we're not just celebrating the daily wins of, for example, a new business acquisition or a new building or a new store? It's not just the physical and
or your dollar amount
or your dollar amount. It's also, how do we celebrate our team. And Disney, I think, does a really good job of celebrating cast members in a way that makes them feel part of that community and that organization. Maybe you saw this, but for me, what comes to mind is in the 50th anniversary, how they celebrated at Walt Disney World, the employees that were the cast members that were there on the first day of the 50th Walt Disney World's anniversary, like people that were maybe not C-suite level cast members, they were just on the front lines, but they were widely celebrated and felt valued and important. And it's not just them that feel celebrated. As a result, it's a multiplier effect of everyone else in their circle feeling that celebration and that sense of every role matters. And that's the cast member mentality. We're not here working, it's not only the star of the show that matters. Like it's every role. And that's that theater mindset. So I think maybe businesses need to operate a little bit more like a Broadway show. What do you think?
I think it would be fun, and I get it. Work's not always fun,
right?
I understand that, but to your point, it's allowing people to be celebrated for the role they're in, because quite frankly, not everybody wants to be C-suite, and we don't want everybody to want that.
Right.
My husband's an electrician, and he is really good at it. He has been asked to move into leadership roles and run large projects. And yes, he will help, but he's like, listen, I also like to work with my tools, and we need that. We need the people that want to go out and work with their tools. So acknowledging people for the work they've done and the dedication to it. Another thing that is seen often in Disney is the blue name tags. Now, in the organization, everybody wears them, but that's another way to signify that this person has not only dedicated their actions and their professional time to this purpose, but they've now been recognized by their colleagues, by fellow cast members, by guests for exemplifying that. Let's tap into that more for sure, because there may be, I'm sorry to interject, but there just may be somebody listening that may not understand the significance of a blue name tag. One, why is it important? What's the detail behind just a colored name tag? And two, the legacy and the honor behind carrying such a name tag, and the idea of the small details even being incorporated in the celebration of an employee. So give us a very small summary for those listening about what that name tag is and why it's important. Yeah, so when you see a cast member, if you're ever at a Disney destination and they have that blue name tag, it signifies that they have been identified as essentially, we'll call them a Disney legend, a Disney icon, a Disney internal icon, we'll say.
Right. Yeah.
But somebody who has exemplified that purpose, who shows up each day, who knows their task, but also make sure to live out that purpose through their daily actions. The guests have seen them, and their fellow cast members have been like, this is a person that keeps my spark alive when I show up to work, and it's just that day. And you can tell. I mean, anytime I've seen somebody, I make sure to stop, congratulate them, tell me about where you've been. And without fail, they're the most humbly, just genuinely kind people. And so it's such a simple switch of color coding on that name tag, but has a huge impact for the cast members that are showing up and that are leading that with that purpose. Yes, they're carrying on Walt's legacy in a way, Walt Disney's legacy, and that gives me shivers to think about. Yeah. That would make me fangirl if I ever got a blue name tag. But the reason why we bring it up, though, is that every business needs their blue name tag for their employees. Yes. Every business needs that moment of celebration, of acknowledgement, to where not only does the internal employee and internal system acknowledge and recognize that individual's achievement, but the blue name tag moment for businesses is so cool, because what happens is it's not just in Disney the internal cast members that know you've done something, the community knows. So people that don't even work for the company understand the significance and the value of what that person has achieved when they have that blue name tag. And that speaks
to the connecting and the messaging of a company. So we've spent a lot of time on discussing the spark of the internal parts of business. Let's talk a little bit more about how to, once you have that spark, how to emanate it to your customers, out into the world.
Yeah, and that's where the creative side comes in, because so often we get into, doing that task, and yes, we know our purpose and we show up and we are grateful for our teammates, but we hit that wall. There is that inevitable wall that everybody hits, whether it's writer's block, whether it's slow growth, whether it is test scores seem to be stagnant, and you're like, what else can we do? And it's interesting because we are creative beings. We have, it's part of our innate self. It's part of the brain development. It's kind of like my friend tells me, yes, you can do math. You just haven't exercised that muscle as much. And I say, yes, you are creative. You just haven't exercised it. And I think it comes back to the fact that as kids, as young adults, we were told, stop asking why. And then we became educated. We became trained. We became ingrained in systems of thought. And because of that, it has stifled that creativity. It's allowed us to say, okay, I need to use my logic brain here. We don't have the money. We don't have the time. We don't have the internal capacity. And so creating new ways to celebrate your cast, to celebrate your staff, celebrate your team, it seems hard. It suddenly seems like, well, we don't have the money to do that, but you don't need the money, especially in the day and age of social media. My goodness, it's funny how a little shout out, a little, kudos can go a long way for people. Now, I'm not saying that's the be all end all, but I do think that organizations need to simplify their thought when it comes to celebrating and start acknowledging, what can we do each day? Can I walk into somebody's office and stop the meeting with the team? And maybe by meeting, I mean, we're having lunch and we just needed to isolate and say, you know what? I really loved the way that you addressed that customer issue the other week, and I haven't had the chance to slow down, but I want to make sure to share that. Do you mind if I send an organizational email and just say, hey, thank you? Simple, no cost, but high reward, because you're identifying the behaviors that person did. You're sharing it out to give them that accolade, and you're helping it be known to the rest of your organization. This is how you live out that purpose. Take ownership, create the moment, problem solve. But this is how you can do it in alignment with what our organization believes in. So that's just the most simplistic way. So I have to ask you, in your career so far, have there been any ways that have really stood out, moments that you're like, nobody would have thought this would have had that impact, but oh my gosh, it meant the world to me?
Yes. So a moment where I felt very much celebrated, and it was something very small, is recently when, unfortunately, my job shift happened and I had to move from not having a job to having a job. The people that showed up for me on LinkedIn, if you're watching, hi, thanks for showing up for me, and just going out and commenting and tagging me and introducing me in conversations, that was amazing. For me, that created a moment because it was just a thoughtful message. I think at the core, I understand what you're trying to say. At the core of every creative experience, it doesn't necessarily, creative way to reach out to a person and make them feel valued is the intention of wanting to connect, but really it's just being kind. I think all of these pillars that you're discussing, can come down to putting myself into that person's shoes and being kind and having empathy. And something as simple as writing a message or an introduction to build relationship via a referral and LinkedIn and a DM. Those are amazing ways that have a multiplier effect impact. And it's just like the thought that counts. It wasn't like I understand what you're saying. When you say create, we're not trying to be like, go out and, get a fireworks show custom made for that person.
More awards. No, it doesn't. That's beautiful. That's wonderful. Thank you. But people just want to be heard and valued and be told you've got something. And yeah, I love that for you.
That's amazing.
I'm going to, if you don't mind, I want to build on that, because I think as much as we're talking creating, it's so funny how yet again, it cycles right back to that connection piece. It goes right back into your board of advisors, as I like to say, your board of directors. Who is that personal and professional board? Because without those people, sometimes we will feel stuck. Now, my family and my friends are amazing support, and they always will be. But sometimes, bless them, they don't understand where that business mind is or where certain opportunities lie. And so having that professional board is so valuable, and why I will never feel bad about explaining to leaders in the past and reiterating to leaders in the future the value of relationships, and intentional and meaningful. And when I say intentional, I don't mean calculating. I don't mean manipulating. I mean showing up each day to authentically listen and to understand and to help people in a way that I'm not looking for anything else other than make sure this person can rise up. So that value will always trump whatever else you're trying to spend time coming up with. Just listen to people.
Right.
Listen and let them be heard.
Connecting, building relationships is the core of every successful business. Your ability to genuinely connect. And like I always try to say, businesses are built by people for people. No matter what industry you are in, being able to hone in on that people first mindset in whatever venue of work that you are doing will set you apart from competitors. For example, people first mindset in content creation. Instead of thinking about what do I want to create today, we need to be thinking about what do people want to learn about? What does my audience want to learn about today? That's people first. That's connection first and foremost. And another avenue, if we're talking about culture building, it's not like, what do we think would be best for our culture? Should we put a ping pong table in our boardroom? How about maybe instead of that mindset, shift it, people first. Let's do a survey. Let's see what people are actually looking for. What are the needs of the people of our industry? And then in another avenue, it's like, okay, well, we discussed content creation. We discussed internal on the connection relationship. But what about in our day-to-day with our coworkers and our colleagues? Like, what are we doing to make that little magic moment to build with our colleagues? Because something I think people forget is that the relationships that you build in your projects and in your job day to day are going to take you so much farther and can follow you later in other opportunities. And I think Disney does such a good job of creating those magical moments that are not just whimsical, like, you know, fairies and pixies. It's like you took the time to write your colleague a thank you note, handwritten, or you understand why your friend at work is having a hard day because maybe they're a single mom. So when they showed up to work, you gave them a coffee for free. And it's like these kinds of ways of building relationship in business, we know as one-to-one, we know as friends and humans and colleagues, whatever. But if we try to infuse a little bit of that into our business practices or into our content creation and have that mindset, it's going to set us up for so much more success. And it also will create that Disney magic a little bit, because I think, and tell me if I'm wrong, at the core of every Disney best practice is a service first mindset. How can I serve this project? How can I serve my customer? How can I serve my team? And I see that in you and how you are trying to build your work at One Spark Solutions. What do you think about the service first mindset of that? You're absolutely spot on, because again, it's living under that big umbrella idea of creating happiness for people of all ages everywhere. You know, it's still that purpose. And as long as you are aligned with that purpose, then everything I'm going to do is to serve those around me. So it's funny, because one thing that stands out to me as a moment that when I was
working at strollers at Hollywood Studios. And what would I do? I would, sell multi-day. Here's your tickets, bring them back. Don't lose them, but good luck, good luck keeping track of those. And
Right.
But it was a wonderful role. I would do ECB parades where if somebody's electrical scooter, the battery died, I'd have to go get it and tow it back. And, you make the moment. But the biggest impact to this day and staying focused on purpose has always been around this gentleman who, it was late afternoon, peak nap time for younger children. They're hot, they're tired, they're just wiped out. His daughter was in full meltdown mode and she wanted Cheetos. Now there's a food cart right next to us that has chips and there were soft drinks, but he's like, I don't know what to do. And he wasn't demanding anything. He was just like, she wants Cheetos. And
Yeah.
I got to get her back because clearly we're not in a good state. And so my task was to take that stroller, roll it back, have our team wipe it down. Thank you. Have a magical day. However, my purpose is to create happiness for people of all ages everywhere. And I knew in that moment, I had some power. I had an opportunity at hand to make sure that the way that they left this experience was not complete meltdown mode. Now, knowing children, I had this much window of time to make this magic happen. She was already there. And so I said, hang tight really quick. I went in, was able to call. We got our little list of all the numbers, was able to call back to another kiosk that I just happened to know had some chips. I also had on hand the cast member lunch area. So I had two thoughts in my mind. Let's see. Well, thank goodness that other cart did have them. And so I went out and I was like, okay, here's what I found out. Do you want me? I can run back there. I can show you with your other kid. And here's the deal. I wasn't leaving my area unattended. We had several cast members. It wasn't after Fantasmic when all the strollers are being dumped in. I had a moment where I could actually guide them to that area. And he was like, no, I know where you're talking about. I think we're good. Maybe it'll distract her enough. So they went and, I'm thinking, oh, please let this not be a mistake. But sure enough, a little while later, they came by. She's living her best life, Cheeto finger, and they're heading back to the resort. And the gratitude that he had honestly, it blew me away in that moment. And as a young adult, early in her career, I'm like, I told you where Cheetos were. But to him, it changed the moment. It changed it changed their entire experience. And so by creating that moment with a service mentality, by connecting him with what he needed, they could walk out and celebrate a great day. And I could then lean into the fact that, wow, this is no joke. When I live out this organizational purpose, I can have a greater impact than if I just stay aligned to my daily tasks. And that's why you'll see your custodial staff out. They're out doing magic paintings with the water. And I'm thinking, I can't do that on paper. And you just drew Mickey Mouse with your mop. And those are moments to create happiness. And so it doesn't take much. We're not talking about big awards. We're not talking about commercials and billboards. We're talking about acts, behaviors, ways to connect people with what they truly need. And what that requires is listening.
All right, Katie, this has been an amazing conversation. From what I'm understanding from you, if businesses want to be able to truly connect, to create, and to celebrate in all of the areas that they want to be successful, they will not be able to if they don't have their purpose and their why, if they don't know the spark that will create that full cycle. Yeah. So if anyone is listening and you are an individual or a business that is having trouble finding that one spark or that one why, I'm going to do this on the screen right over here. Wrong person, but whatever. I was just going to highlight Katie. Katie is your girl. So reach out to her on LinkedIn. But Katie, please let everyone know listening how they can connect with you if they want to do that.
Yes. Thank you so much. So there are naturally social media. I'm all over the place, and most places it is just straight up Katie Kearns. I do host the podcast One Spark Stories, where we lean into more stories like Rita's and everybody that has really gone through that journey of connecting, creating, and celebrating, finding their purpose by embracing that one spark, that moment in time. So LinkedIn is a fantastic way to connect. I also have my website, and you can send an inquiry there, but reach out if you're looking for keynotes or different ways to help build and design the systems that would work in your organization.
Fantastic, everyone. Thanks for listening, and we will catch you next time.
All right. What'd you think? Hopefully you didn't notice all the panic and behind the scenes chaos that we were feeling. And if you didn't, then let me remind you that that will be the same for you. So often our minds play those tricks like, oh gosh, this is terrible. Nobody even is connecting. It's not going to go well. What if it doesn't? What if? But here we did. We just went for it. And it, on our mind, yeah, could have been better. But for others, they didn't know what better meant to us. It's the same thing I would tell my family and friends when they would be planning a wedding. Every time they'd start to panic over what do we have as little party favors or what do we put at the table, I'd look them in the eye and say, what did I have at mine? What was my little favor? What did I have at the table? Now I remember, not one of them could remember. And so it's important to recall that what's important to us is not always what others are seeking out. They were there for the moment. You all are here to hear stories. So when you find that opportunity to be creative, to embrace a learning moment, go with it. You are your own worst critic. To everybody else, you're trying something that may seem scary, it may seem off-putting, but you're going for it and you're going to become better and stronger and wiser for it. Now, of course, that's within reason. Don't do anything that's going to hurt you, that's going to dull your passion, diminish that spark. But it's always worth it to lean into that discomfort and try something new. So let me know what it is that you really have found to ignite your purpose. What is it that gets you up and motivated each day? And what are ways that you could continue to celebrate within your organization and make sure other people know their value? So as always, be well, stay curious, and I'll see you real soon.
Did you know the shortest president was James Madison at 5 feet and 4 inches?
I'm taller than him. Later, Tater.